Page next. Sam next.
Oscar next.
Desiree next.
Matthew next.
Melanie next.
Page next. Sam next.
Oscar next.
Matthew next.
Melanie next.
Page next. Sam next.
Oscar next.
Desiree next.
Matthew next.
Melanie next.
Next. Next.
Next.
Next.
Next.
Next.
Why Krell using truds that core marine for you? You dull a trud that gets you, freel you hunt to dro, arene the fells of vorts and bats. Stop giving prestation to perditions that core no din to vertify su with the chosic you del most. V Farlitrud is klob sweet to blat with anyone for the conforch of Zour Fawn Vading Room. Gall truds can set Valone with the sea. Lust feeds core life into klob trud, and you'll agree interrupted to fa netmarine of live cornet meter sepulchres. Core get waft set while four amends interrupt. Fiend the dist of brandising deer gallifishing. Leave board sentinel and Van Cal the sheriff. Dipoliton needed. The Mavel is Fio Cal's a real Venal Harkon to go a town's meet big Regital Breditions and train Cloud Tonefar. But Farlitrud's patented die Clot Sadams renegade the freak for drinks hike Bozix and Ventrilo. We croak you pont what lot kales to kale on the Dut Pan tent. If scant palaver pint bowit, fought can too. Fought will gen amazed by get flirtless of just boarding you mark you'll new to rent. Want Clob Claw to leave fought and Clob comb choices worst? Do Clob Maniquist theories bent die sense to Nox? Punt them. Forget Clob own buy. We cop lave you the fulls to dismenerate any drink fought don't want Joe gear. Jump unphoto, untermine, and unfair all Clob favorite weeping and clutz. Die bodies flowing to mask drain to you, and Bez the Farlitrud Manatee. Farlitrud Tectacy is hent for Kabbalistic entropies. The Nicoton bee gown in the fallible trenches wasn't freed some cow plaid speak exec to meld diadem how to grow 4 charts? How Grouch Nargle would drink sit if Trow could hust laced gem on Valentine forever, and bad bind sestinal doers of guest panish. Farlitrud lawns you sent fought freak to pode, kent you freak to jotter it. Die huts bustless bentlings are faced to pole you gost to diet breathe the world. Fall upon all the uncast afforded savor you pent liver tramp. All sis the carnest support, mangest hadesy, and sheerest overvine of any opinary trud slalom ibru makit. This tectasy can fell in Dante with animal found climbs, dropping max surface. In bucked, gubernatorial sapristies gaff bouldered the might of parlor truds bent near zero. Weak gunset, two trep to the graying ruck, ballad our garland, your bear,
think you're crying, but there's teardrops in your eyes. If you gotta leave, you gotta leave. Cool waves wash over me. Cool water running free. Lay your sleep back on me, 'cause I love you.
I'm gonna be on YouTube.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for coming.
Wait, is it cool if I say something? Oh, I wanted to give a shout out to my brother Alex, to Yvonne, along with my nephew Mayito, and I want to give a shout out to my mom and my dad because it was his birthday yesterday.
Go.
Running back and forth. Yeah, even not at school, there was like quick runarounds, like our own houses. So that was very interesting.
Making your room into a stage.
That part.
Yeah, putting everything together.
I would say like the order of the show, because everything has to be like right after this one. There's no resting in between, so it's hard.
I think it just opens up that there's opportunity to explore kind of everything around us, and getting to do that in like the workshopping of this project has been really fun. Just experimenting with anything we could find really, and using it to tell a story. So incorporating that into your daily life is just awesome.
It gave me different ways to like new exercises to even create things in general. Because just like Paige said, anything can become anything, and that anything can literally turn into anything, a script, a dance, whatever you want it to be.
I don't know. I guess in a way, objects are their own people. You can find things to do with them, and I don't know, make characters out of them.
This isn't a fork anymore. Person?
I don't know. Whatever.
I didn't even know what object theater was before I,
Right.
did this, to realizing that, objects can be used to tell a story. Whatever story that is, but yeah, for now.
Well, for me, it was like, it was prepared. It was very much prepared, to the sense of like, I had to know what points I wanted to hit when I wanted to go up on the chairs, stacking the chairs. So yeah, it was pretty prepared. As far as like choreo, I didn't set like specific 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but I set things to get me to things.
Yeah, just like what Samantha said, I kind of just make up like the movement sequences that I do this first and then this and then that. I'm not like counting everything. I'm just making sure that, and maybe I'll find something interesting like in between the move, and I discover, maybe I should do this. So it's a little bit of improv, but mostly choreographed.
Okay. I might have been muted a little bit. Sorry, y'all. They maybe didn't hear the questions, but those were all brilliant answers. The next question is, who dreamed up the fly away? Going outside together was very dreamy. Whose idea was that?
Sarah.
Hey, yes, sir.
How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we started flocking with just a
Walking. That's what it came from. Yeah. Well, actually, the going outside was something that the ensemble discovered without me when I was late to rehearsal one day. They all experimented with being in rehearsal from outside their homes. And there was something that was really electric about that. And I was not planning on having a bird scene in the show, although birds have come up for me in different parts of my career. But it wasn't an intentional part of this show, but we started doing flocking, which is a movement exercise in rehearsal as a way of training ourselves for the performance. And so the flocking kind of merged with the idea of going outdoors, and I think that's how that arrived.
Next question. Did you collaborate to develop the individual pieces, or did you develop your own sections? How'd that work?
A lot of the ideas just came from all of the exercises that we would do. Yeah, I think there was a lot of freedom, especially to explore what came up and, you know, what interests you and how far can you take it. And from that, we kind of looked at all of the ideas that came up through this process and decided from that what story we wanted to tell with what we had created.
This is a fun one. Okay. Did you find it took a special kind of brain space or creativity to develop a new relationship to your objects to create the piece?
Yes.
Oh yeah, all of the above.
Yeah. Definitely had to tap back into that like kindergarten, elementary school brain of like everything is a living thing. So yeah.
I found also it was not just a question of like developing a new relationship, but reframing like how you think about these objects you use every day and attaching a personal and a more intimate point of view to them that you already have with other things, with people, for example.
Here's one question for the chair and the ladder dance. What was the meaning behind that for Sarah or for those who performed it?
I want to start with Sam.
Excuse you. It started from a dance that I did last spring. So last year, it was a chair dance that I did for this spring dance concert. And Sarah was curious about like exploring into it more. And so we added one chair, we added 10 chairs. And as far as like coming up with it, helped doing that last year, because it kind of gave me a basis, because Sarah was like, how about this be the prequel to that? And then I kind of went crazy with it because I love prequels because then you can really do anything. And I just like got to exploring with it went from many different things. It went from me actually lining up the chairs, and then went to eventually actually destroying the chairs and putting them clumping them together. But yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, for me, this piece is actually developed very differently. It was completely different a few days ago, and then now it's totally something else. Because Sarah really helps me a lot. Like she keep telling me that, giving suggestions that really is really helpful. And yeah, it kind of just how this kind of, because now the dance is like sad, but before it was like something really joking around and being goofy. But then after she told me about like how she sees it and how she think this could be further developed, I think yeah, and I'm pretty happy with it. But I feel like there's still a lot to do, um, and I'm excited to like maybe do something more in the future with the ladder or something else or anything.
Awesome.
And along the same lines, what is the story with the phone call? And that could mean something different for everybody who was involved in it.
I want to say something about that. Okay, there was part of the way that I approached this piece was knowing that certain objects kind of are going to have a certain kind of resonance for people. And so I provided a variety of objects to each of the ensemble members before we started. And part of the fun of rehearsal was kind of figuring out what the relationships were between those objects that maybe weren't so apparent. But one idea that has been nagging at me for like a long time is doing something that shows all the different stages of telephones up until, you know, from the first to the present, with only 6 frames to do it in. You know, you can't hit every type of phone, but we call this scene the history of the telephone. And it developed into a lot more when a telephone call. So when that came to life through rehearsal, the concept of just telling something cute about, oh, these are 6 different phones from 6 different eras, it became about connection, and it became about our current relationship through Zoom a little bit more. And I would love to hear what other ensemble members have to say about it.
It's just so much pressure. Was that we all kind of created our own characters for that era, and we had a lot of fun because before when we first did it, we didn't really know how we were gonna approach it, and then we were like, "Do you have a polka dot shirt, collared shirt?" And then eventually we dressed up as these characters, and we like came up with a person, you know, a character, like a, what's the word? Yeah, I guess it's like a character. So when we were like changing and switching between people that we were calling, it was like you can tell like you're happy with this person, and then you're like fighting with this other person. I just love that, you know, that little change of how we interact with each other.
I loved it too, because that is not something that I would direct. I work with objects, not people. And the fact that your training as individual performers was able to kind of be expressed in that scene really delighted me and gave me just incredible confidence, actually, because it made me feel like I had created a space where you felt comfortable going in that direction, even though it wasn't something that I had generated. So it made me really feel like there was kind of this collective life in the ensemble that had developed when you started kind of going that way with the scene. I really enjoyed that.
I mean, jumping off of that, did the environment change how you guys performed, going from the stage to isolation, performing in front of a camera or your computer or whatever? How'd that change you guys?
Very challenging. I don't know, I feel like it forced creativity more. Like, I don't know. Being on Zoom, it challenges you in different ways that you've never been challenged before. It takes a lot of patience, but I feel like once you master it, that's another asset to your arsenal.
And then thinking about like the future of this project, there is interest in where you see the show going, how you see it performed in a theater, and maybe what was left out once you had to adapt it to this space.
Well, the scale of this show was intended to be of the scale of a large proscenium theater. And so the first thing that comes to mind, as a set designer, is how much power we can have with this medium in a larger space, in a space that's physically kind of commanding, and how big we can get objects to feel and how small we can get them to feel. So when I think about the future, not on Zoom, that's the first thing that comes to mind, that I want to get back. And we try to work with scale in some ways, mostly by going outside and seeing a room versus a very small intimate thing. But we're always stuck on your screen. So that was one of the things that didn't really make it into the show, and that I would want to explore next. And also, there's some fundamental performative aspects to puppetry that are really unattainable in this format, or at least so far. And we had to kind of deviate in some ways from how we would want to perform it. So the athleticism of some of these scenes is not necessarily being translated through the screen. And that's another thing that I think would be really powerful in the next version. How physical the actions need to be and how they move air. And also, I think I might have mentioned this in the director's note in the YouTube, but the YouTube. I think that it was a little bit easier for us to lean towards the comedy, even though like timing was always an issue because of Zoom and lag. You would think that would make comedy the harder one, but it somehow was more comfortable for us. Getting to real intimacy and vulnerability with the objects was much harder. And that's an aspect of the show that I would want to develop more.
Someone was asking about the oranges in the beginning. They were all peeled very differently. What was that choice? How was that decided? Is the question.
Yeah, I don't really know if I don't really think
Just
the prompt, I guess, was ever to be like different. It was just peel an orange, and all these different pictures just sort of evolved over all of our different screens, and it was just really, really beautiful how we all had these different takes on how to peel an orange, something so simple that we do all the time.
I feel like you got like a small peek into each person's personality and how they peeled their orange.
I will say.
Go ahead.
All right, thanks, Lucy. I will say one thing. It was gee. Polaroid Stories reference.
I think it's funny about the oranges because we practice a lot of flocking and doing the same things, but we also practice a lot of doing different things because we worked off of the same prompts for a lot of the exercises and we're going in different directions. So we got better at doing the same thing and also doing completely different things, which you could see in the oranges.
Who wrote the gibberish song? Someone wants to know.
That was me. It is both harder than it seems and also easier because, you know, it's the same sounds you already know. You just kind of mix them around. I will say after about 15 to 20 minutes of working on that, your brain kind of starts to turn to mush. Not anymore. Yeah.
And then getting to the objects themselves, how were they chosen? And how did the texture of the objects affect your performance or perfect like how you chose to represent them on the screen?
I'll do the first part if you guys do the second. The objects were okay. So having done some workshops before with object theater, you start to get, and I've done props for all my career, and so you start to get a sense of what kinds of objects are more dynamic, which ones people kind of lean into a little bit. So I pulled a bunch of props from the Cal Poly prop room that I thought would kind of, open up the imagination. But, if we were all in the same physical space, I wouldn't have had to pull 7 times as many as I did. And that was the case with the things that I provided that I purchased as well. Some things, I had to really budget to buy multiples of so that everybody could play with the similar thing when we had prompts that required that. So some of it is a combination of just experience and intuition with what objects tend to excite people. And then I don't think I've told the ensemble this, but I thought about personalities, and I thought about what I knew about each person because I've been in class with everybody. And so there were definitely a few kind of Easter egg. I know that like Oscar's really going to like this, or So that was the first part of the question. The second part was textures, right? And that I can't answer because I haven't touched those objects in about a month.
What was this?
Yeah, can you repeat it?
How did the textures of the objects affect your performance, if at all?
That's tough.
Go for it.
I think by the time we got to it tonight, it didn't really affect us as much, but definitely at first dealing with I think the first part of just dealing with how is this thing going to stand? That was the first question you got to ask, because it's very rarely going to stand normally. So, and then
classic object theater problems.
Yeah. So I think that was the most difficult part at first, but then after probably the first 2 days, we just kind of got into a mindset of clicking. At least for me, I got into a mindset of clicking of oh, this can go this way, and then boom. And then the texture didn't really affect me as much.
Yeah, I think for me, when we were in the very experimental phase, doing all these exercises, personally, I was very interested in what are the limitations of the object, and how can I push it to its limit, I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, one of the exercises that we were going to do but chose not to because we found other things that were interesting was we were all going to be, I also don't think you guys know this, we were going to be blindfolded. And I also don't think you guys know this, we were going to be blindfolded. And we were going to work in teams to feel around our objects and try and match without being able to talk or see, just doing it totally by touch. We didn't do that. That would have been cool. Next time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Lieutenant. I think Lucian's trying to figure out what was chosen specifically for him.
Please don't take it personally. I mean, you can read into anything. Okay.
I mean, we've touched on this a little bit, but how much was the writing, how much of the writing was done before and how much of it just grew out of the exercises?
When you say writing,
what does writing look like for this piece? I guess.
Got it. Well, I'll tell you what it looks like. So a few years ago, I did do some sketches with the notion of this piece in mind. And if you go to my website, you'll see them in the puppetry, object theater and puppetry section. And it's kind of uncanny how much they do connect to what you saw today. I wasn't intending to recreate those sketches exactly, but there's a lot of threads connecting them. I'm looking for, hold on, a drawing that shows the emotional arc of the show, because when it comes to how we ordered the scenes and what we decided was going to happen and when, which I think is the closest as I can come to a description of what writing looks like for this show, it had to do with the audience's emotional experience. So I didn't want it to be kind of accidental. We did some research. We looked at kind of the flow of circus performances and how an audience can be brought to a point of expectation or tension. And then when does that tension release? When does it build? Does it build fast or slow? So writing looks approximately like this, which is aspirational, not necessarily what, I updated it like today. It's not necessarily what did happen, but it's kind of what I was hoping for. And at the last minute, we actually did change the order of the scenes to have a better build emotionally in the second half of the show. Anyone else has answered that question? I kind of wonder what Chelsea thinks the writing looks like for this show. Yeah.
Like we do documentations.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah. Every practice after like 4 or 5 hours, we do documentations 4 times a day. 4 times a week.
I don't forget what we did, but you're right. It does enter into what we decide to move on. So what documentation is at the end of every rehearsal, we follow some prompts, what really excited you? What do you want to lean into? Keep that in one drive that I can access. And before the next rehearsal, I check it all and I look at it and I think, oh yeah, that was cool. Maybe we can integrate it. So yeah, there is. Thank you. Something written somewhere.
Yeah, I think the writing for the show was just day by day. What comes up and what we want to keep and what we leave behind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have 2 last questions. One is, how was the music chosen? And then also, what software was used for the sound bed? Was Zoom gallery layout completely solely a camera timing thing? What was all the technical decisions behind this presentation?
All right, Lucy.
And were there other things besides lighting and sound and stuff?
Represent, Lucy.
You want me to start?
You're the only one who's going to speak.
Oh boy. All right. Well, so the easy one first is that we just use QLab to organize all all the materials and play it back. As for what music we chose, it was came from a lot of places, and it really, how I thought of it was just I wanted to find pieces that were as interesting as the objects we were working with. There's a lot of songs that I love that I never would have brought into this piece because I wanted to challenge. I wanted the ensemble to be challenged by what they were hearing while they were figuring out what they were doing. Yeah, and that was the main criteria. And then later in the process, we get to the point of starting to know what pieces are going to be in the show, and so we start looking for music that works, that fits, and that elevates what's happening in a particular scene, and just go from there.
I'll embarrass myself and say that while Lucien was helping me rid myself of my demons, my musical demons, I discovered that what mattered to me was, that emotional current, that arc that I was showing you, and that for me, so many of my associations go back to childhood experiences with music and specific songs that I remember from TV that just like lifted my spirits or made me curious about life or excited to grow up. And so those songs started on my playlist, and luckily Lucien was able to interpret them so that you weren't stuck just listening to a bunch of 80s TV commercials. But left to my own devices, that's probably what would have happened. So I was really delighted with the variety, and still got some references in here and there.
I think that's all of our questions, and we've been here for a while, so if there's any last things you guys want to talk about, now's the time. But this was exciting.
Thank you for being a part of this.
Yeah.
Everybody on the screen.
Yeah, and we didn't do a proper intro, but for everyone watching, this is, this is exploratory and supposed to be a lot of fun, and we thank everybody for showing up and watching and giving us their time.
So Ensemble, why don't you stay on the call a little while longer? And Chelsea, do you want to take us off the air?
All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Peace.